what an opportunity this is to share with so many people in the mainstream what we really love about the prairie wetlands.
We started by bringing in an Academy Award nominated crew that really had a passion for birds and for conservation, and that shows in the film.
It's not a message about hunting and how wonderful hunting is. It's a message about how wonderful conservation is.
Get 'em, boys.
Oh, it was fun to sit next to the young guy this morning and finish it out on a high note.
As hunters and outdoorsmen, we get to see things that most people never see.
Waterfowl hunters are a special breed of crazy.
We're a bunch of determined individuals, and we push for wetland conservation. It is our passion.
Get them. Well done! Right.
To see them cut and dip and weave.
So seeing those ducks decoy and seeing that acrobatic moves in the air is something I never get tired of.
It was like the epitome of puddle hunting.
And when I'm outside chasing birds and sitting in a blind, I'm never more in the moment than right then.
To watch the birds work is the real objective of the hunt.
Ducks Unlimited Television is presented by Drake, the Waterfowl Company.
Hello, and welcome back to Ducks Unlimited Television. I'm Betsy Nabel. We are back at it again with co-host Colin Mulligan and his friend and mentor Chris Dorsey in Saskatchewan. I told you before, this is a very special episode, one highlighting a unique film project near and dear to DU members and staff. The film, Wings Over Water, has taken IMAX theaters by storm, and you'll soon see why it means so much to wetlands and waterfowl conservation. Right now on DUTV.
What we're trying to do this morning is draw these birds up the field and across us away from our A-frame and kind of center them up right here. So hopefully they read the script and we have a great morning.
You know, Wings Over Water, this wondrous IMAX film, came together because of a meeting in Chicago, Illinois at the Max McGraw Wildlife Foundation that Charlie Potter put together. It was all the leaders of waterfowl conservation in North America. It was Ducks Unlimited, it was major donors, it was Fish and Wildlife Service, Canadian Wildlife Service, really kind of looking at the prairies, looking at the North American plan and saying, what are we doing here? Are we talking about this? Are we building a constituency of long-term support for that program, which has been very successful? But nobody really knows about the prairie wetlands. Shoot them. Looks shootable to me.
McGraw brought together the leaders in conservation from across the continent. We have to reach the mainstream. So the whole message is taking conservation to the mainstream. It's not a message about hunting and how wonderful hunting is. It's a message about how wonderful conservation is. That is the goal, to take conservation to the mainstream. And the 320 million Americans who may not belong to a conservation organization or have no idea why we care, we have to reach them. And IMAX is the best way to do it. And McGraw, working with Ducks Unlimited and others, is transforming the conservation communications landscape. It's really about education, having members of Congress understand why this is such an important region, and they can learn that through their constituents at home. That's a first.
Those are handfuls, huh? Got him. Put the work in, baby.
Ducks Unlimited Television is presented by Drake Waterfowl Systems, innovators in waterfowl hunting. Mossy Oak Shadow Grass Habitat, the official camo of Ducks Unlimited. Browning Firearms. the best there is. Native nurseries, hand-selected, hand-grown plants for wildlife. Higdon Outdoors. Quality, customer service, innovation, that's Higdon. And Ducks Unlimited's Conservation for a Continent campaign. Our wetlands, our legacy.
This IMAX film is something quite frankly unheard of. It has everything to do with the science and the migration south and how this environment and landscape impacts that migration.
You know, we started by bringing in an Academy Award nominated crew that really loved, had a passion for birds and for conservation, and that shows in the film. I mean, you talk about thousands of hours sitting in blinds, you know, waiting for a great horned owl to come down and get the right shot on a nesting hen, and there's just so many amazing sequences in that film. If you haven't seen that film, you've got to go check it out because it really is a stunning film. The fly-along sequences with cranes, with Canada geese, and just understanding, you're teaching, of course, but you're inspiring and you're entertaining as you get into that theater. And of course, the IMAX theater, 80 by 60 foot screen, is totally immersive. You get inside of that and it's as if you've stepped onto the Prairie Wetlands. And for most people, they'll never come to the Prairie Wetlands, but that's very close to the real deal when you step into that theater.
Hunting is outside the film. What drives all this? Conservationists, people who love to hunt. So if you introduce any subject with hunting, you're causing people to be emotional one way or the other. Let's have them love the resource, become emotionally attached to this, celebrate why this landscape is so wonderful, and then learn about the people who care so much about it. That's a much better approach, and it's one that we think is quite successful. And for DU, I think that probably, Chris, the beauty of this is, look at the millions, literally millions of people who are learning about Ducks Unlimited, who never would. They don't get a DU magazine, they're not a DU member, right. But now they're finding out what DU does.
Look, if you're a duck hunter, you know about the Prairie Pothole region, but if you're not a duck hunter, you've never heard of that place. You've heard of the Amazon, you've heard of the Serengeti, the Everglades, but when it comes to knowing our own backyard and ecologically, the prairie wetlands are more important to North America than really any other ecosystem. 70% of all the water birds in the continent originate right here. So it's something that nobody will care about protecting this unless they understand the value of it. And that was really the idea behind Wings. And then, of course, we brought in Michael Keaton, Birdman, to do a bird film, seemed kind of appropriate, and did it at a very high level. And now it's all across the world. It's in 4 languages. And we're starting this 10-year campaign, basically, to brand the prairie wetlands so that people think of it the same way they think about the Amazon or the Serengeti. And that, at the end of the day, is all we're trying to do.
In 2019, Ducks Unlimited was approached by our conservation partners to support a new film, one with important subject matter to the entire DU family. This film, titled Wings Over Water, would explore the Prairie Pothole region, Ducks Unlimited's conservation priority #1. Known as the Duck Factory, this region of Canada and the US is the breeding home to millions of waterfowl, wading birds, songbirds, and many others. The idea was to follow 3 different species, a mallard pair, a sandhill crane pair, and a yellow warbler seeking a mate, on their journey back to the Prairie Pothole breeding grounds, while providing outstanding audience education along the way. Was it a success? To date, hundreds of thousands of people have seen Wings Over Water in IMAX theaters around the country. Narrated by actor Michael Keaton, the film blends striking imagery with revealing interviews about captivating prairie pothole stories as well. The movie starts at the beginning, when Ice Age glaciers receded, leaving the landscape marked with thousands of pothole depressions. These holes, filled with water, creating the perfect waterfowl and bird nesting habitat. Bird species need a mixture of water, cover, and food to bring life into the world. Potholes contain all 3, providing everything needed to hatch and raise babies into young birds, sustaining and growing populations every spring. Ducks Unlimited's highest priority conservation goals for the Prairie Pothole region are stopping wetland loss, restoring wetland complexes, and preventing further loss of native grasslands. Unfortunately, the PPR can't be drought-proof, so the best conservation strategy is to use voluntary incentive-based easements to protect existing wetlands and grasslands. This way, when wet conditions return, the elements are in place to quickly rebuild waterfowl populations for today, tomorrow, and forever. To find out more about Wings Over Water, go to wingsoverwaterfilm.com, and to learn more about DU's Prairie Pothole Region mission, please visit ducks.org.
DU Insights is brought to you by Mossy Oak Properties. Find your favorite place at mossyoakproperties.com.
I've known Charlie Potter for 25, 30 years, a long time ago. Great guy, great friend, and we've had a lot of trips together around the world. He's a passionate waterfowler. I mean, he lives and breathes duck hunting. I mean, he is part duck. I think he was hatched, he wasn't born. I don't think I've ever met anybody who has been such an advocate for conservation, particularly waterfowl conservation. So he wakes up in the morning thinking about how could he change the world of waterfowl and wetlands conservation, and he goes to bed at night thinking the same thing.
When you guys were getting the IMAX film and creating Wings, how did you figure out, I mean, what are the studies on the way kids learn and how you figured out how to break it down into short form content? I mean, what does that look like?
Yeah, well, there's a guy, Flippin, believe it or not, that's actually his name, is one of the largest teacher trainers in America, and he came up with a genius idea. Basically what they know is people, not just kids, but people learn for about 20 minutes, then it tapers off and then it declines. And so after about 20 minutes in a classroom, teacher comes in and says, you know, kids, let's take a break. We're gonna watch this little video, 5-minute clip of something from Wings. There's a curriculum then developed to talk about that, so the teacher can show this, then ask questions about it. So for about 15 minutes, they get immersed in this amazing landscape of the prairie wetlands, and then they go back to learning and they've reset the brain to learn again.
So you learn about this in a way that is not lecturing, but it's engrossing you in this fascinating world of nature. The prairie wetlands are North America's Amazon. I mean, it's 150 million acres, 300,000 square miles. It's 100 times bigger than Yellowstone National Park, and yet it's just magnificent for its diversity and for its culture.
Got him. Putting the work in, baby.
We hope that we are able to deliver the same emotion that we have for the Amazon, the Everglades, the Serengetis, about our prairie wetlands. These are ours. They're not somewhere else. They're ours. And without the prairies, we don't have birds. We know that. And getting kids, and then as a result, their parents interested. IMAX gives us the greatest content, and IMAX on its own is extremely successful. We've just supercharged it now by realizing we've got all these other methods to reach people. When I say short form, it's being introduced constantly to nature and why nature's wonderful and why the prairie wetlands are so important.
Each hunting situation we find ourselves in are all unique. The way you're gonna hunt and handle your dog is gonna be different in a flooded rice field versus flooded timber. And there are several factors you have to take into account in each situation. You have environmental factors, such as snow, ice, fog, low light. Then you have terrain. Is it flat with no terrain features? Is it hilly? Is it high cover, wooded, sloping terrain? All those you have to take into account when you're lining your dog. Then you have barriers. Physical, such as a ditch, or psychological, such as a shadow line. And then you have suction. Suction is where your dog wants to pull off the line to an old fall or maybe a point of land in a body of water. All those things you have to take into account. Today, we're going to focus on barriers, both physical and psychological. I'm sure everyone's seen it before. A dog hits a barrier, such as a ditch, and he won't cross it. He starts running side to side and will not push back to make the recovery. Now, how do we get our dogs crossing these barriers? It's real simple. First, we start with a trailing memory. The dog knows exactly where the bumper is. You turn him around, send him through the ditch. Then we're going to start extending both the length of the retrieve on each side of the ditch. Then we're going to go to a sight memory, which the dog is going to be sitting remote. We put the bumper out, walk back to the dog, send him across the ditch. And our last thing is a mark. Again, we start everything short and continually make it longer as we progress through the training. You follow these simple steps and your dog's not going to have any problem crossing some of these physical barriers such as a ditch. Now let's talk about psychological barriers. Psychological barriers can be something as simple as crossing a shadow line, crossing from short grass into heavy cover, crossing out of grass into a plowed field like you see at a dove hunt a lot of times. Now, how do we get them over those psychological barriers? The exact same way we do the physical barriers. We start off with trailing memories past the shadow line. We start off with trailing memories into the heavy cover. We start off with shadow lines from short grass into a plowed field. Then we go to the sight memory, just like before. We walk out, put it, walk back to the dog, send them. Next, we move to marks. Now, one of the key things of doing this, you have to do inversion. Not only do you want to run them into the shadow line, you want to run them out of the shadow line. Not only do you want to run them into the plowed field, you want to run them out of the plowed field. So these are some great tips to help your dog get past these psychological barriers when you're in the field. Before you line that dog on that long recovery, take these factors into account. It's the little things. Which way's the wind blowing? Which way's the terrain sloping? Is there heavy cover in between the dog and the bird? Take your time, slow down. It'll make your recovery faster. The key thing is get out, train your dogs, work them through the shadow lines, work them into tall cover, work them through ditches. All this training will pay huge dividends and make for a successful hunt every single time.
Duck Dog is presented by Purina Pro Plan, nutrition that performs. DUTV is powered by Browning Ammunition, the best there is. Biologic, scientifically proven wildlife products. Purina Pro Plan, nutrition that performs. Tetra Hearing, more than hearing protection, it's hearing perfection. Mossy Oak Properties, America's land specialist. Zinc Calls, a champion in every call. Closed captioning for Ducks Unlimited Television is brought to you by Mossy Oak Bottomland, the official timber pattern of Ducks Unlimited.
So if Wings has had so much success in DU, what's your guys' vision for how you continue to build on the momentum that you've had?
Yeah, there's a whole pipeline of great films coming. You know, the Secrets of the Great Salt Lake is in production right now, and obviously that's a very important area, and it's an amazing resource that they're trying to save, and I think they've got a real shot at doing that.
And then Vanishing Lands, the story of Louisiana, the culture, the history, the importance of the Louisiana marsh to North America. It's not just the marsh, it's the whole industry that's relying on that. And the marshlands are vanishing, but when they vanish, also the industries go with it, the culture. So if you look at 3 films that are in production, Wings Over Water made, Vanishing Lands, and Secrets of Great Salt Lake, it gives Ducks Unlimited a platform for people to really understand what DU is doing, all the way from the breeding grounds, through the migratory corridor, all the way to the wintering grounds.
And just to make sure I understand something correctly, there is no hunting in any of those films.
It wasn't designed to be a hunting forward kind of platform. It does, however, create a national, international conversation which then creates a lot of earned media where we can talk about, well, let's talk about these people that actually have protected a lot of habitat up there. So if we were to lead with that, we probably wouldn't get access to as many theaters. But let's get into those theaters, and then as we move this circus around the world and have all the associated earned media around it, we could talk about hunters and the role of hunting and conservation. Yeah.
You know, my overall takeaway from this trip is just a sense of gratitude for how thankful I am to have something like waterfowl hunting that has impacted me on such a deep level, and to understand where that waterfowl migration starts right here on the Prairie Pothole region, and being so thankful to have people around me that encourage not only myself but the next generation to be leaders. They give you the opportunity and put the weight on your shoulders as not an expectation, but an opportunity to grow into that role that they believe you can be. And so for me, is just something that, like I said, I don't really have any other words for besides that I'm very thankful.
Educating a broad audience on wetlands conservation's value was Wings Over Water's goal, one met with flying colors. This unique look into the birds' lives puts viewers on the prairie and cheering for the success of every species. Ducks Unlimited is proud to support the award-winning Wings Over Water, and we encourage everyone to see it and enjoy it as we have. Thanks again for watching DUTV, and be sure to tune in next week for another exciting episode.
If you could just like serve up some ducks like right in the hole.
Right now, or?
Yeah, like in like,
you
if I was to guess, maybe like 11 minutes, I'd be ready in 11 minutes.
You want a coffee while we wait?
I mean, hot chocolate would be great.
I'll push the button anytime you want.
Would you mind filling me up on coffee again though?
Yes, sir.